Hi, all. It sounds like the members of the public also cannot hear anything. I'm getting a lot of comments in the chat.
lifelong learning. Our children's areas are areas that need to be upgraded. They're not as welcoming as we would like to see, but that is something that this plan has addressed. Organizationally, we need to address and streamline the ways we provide library service. And so adapting this building to ways to better improve the customer experience is very critical. And then lastly, what we're describing as uniquely Richmond is to improve the way we present historical information, cultural information, and artistic information. We have spaces in this building that have those things, but not quite in the ways that we want to, that the 2022 library needs to deliver them to our users. So that's really a quick overview of where we've come in the last 100 years, and this process will help us show where we need to go.
Thanks, Scott. So Gil, do you want to talk about the guiding principles?
These guiding principles were some of the kind of big picture goals that we wanted to accomplish with this project. And we worked with the library committee from the very beginning to develop these goals. And we refined them with the community when we presented them at the first workshop here. And we took the feedback that we received and continued to work on them. These principles are the goals that we test the development of the project with and the success of the project. And we see them as continually evolving and developing. So the ones that we've identified are creating a library that's a reflection of Richmond and its community, creating a place that's welcoming and inclusive to all patrons and visitors, a transparent and modern building, an innovative leader for libraries nationwide. So something that's an example for all libraries and not just something that's local to Richmond, and creating a sustainably designed building. And with those guiding principles, we also started to look at a list of strategies to implement those principles. Did I switch over? Okay. So a list of strategies to kind of concrete steps to achieve those guiding principles. So for example, to create the first net zero library in Virginia, improving access to the building by eliminating the steps and ramps that are in front of the building to make it easier to access. What we put here as creating a storefront, so making the activity inside more visible from the street, offering an innovative library designed for the 21st century, contributing to a new Richmond culture while honoring the history, and welcoming, again, visitors of all ages with different spaces available to them and different collections and state-of-the-art technology.
So the Richmond Public Library committee and board, members of both, put together this strategic plan very, very recently, in fact, and it dovetails into our planning process for the library as a whole. So some of the things that Scott had spoken about regarding access, which we'll go through here in a minute, all of those things are goals that are indicated in this strategic plan. And you can actually find the strategic plan on the Richmond Public Library website. It's about 10 pages, and a lot of work went into it because of all of this time that we've now spent looking at the library, analyzing, figuring out what we want to move forward with. The library was able to put this together. So we've talked a lot about access. So what exactly do we mean? Here's Richmond Public Library today. You see there are a lot of stairs There are stairs to get to the entry. There are stairs within the building. The levels of the building are not aligned. So you have stairs all over the place. This is not very friendly or accessible for everyone. So what we're trying to do is make this accessible to all. This was a very 70s way of addressing buildings. The building is very closed off. Even though it has these beautiful, large windows, you could barely tell because of the huge columns that are in front. And then as you can see, there have been a lot of retrofits. So in other words, as Scott said, when this library was built, technology was not the way it is today, not even close. And so this image that you see on the upper right is showing a raised platform. That platform is raised in order to get technology into that space so that people can have computers to use. So it's wonderful because it provides a space for people to be at and use the internet and use computers, but it is not the most aesthetic thing that you might see, and it takes up a lot of space because you need all these ramps and guardrails and everything in order to get there. So these are the kinds of things that we're talking about, and these are just a few of the myriad of issues that the library has today. The basement, basically where we are now, this lower level, there are a lot of flooding issues. There's, you have bathrooms downstairs, you have special collections, and all of these areas, they're not easily accessible. So, who's been to special collections in this library? Who's actually been in that space? Okay, it's like 40% maybe. What if special collections was, on the first floor? Do you think that more of you would go to the special collections space? I think it's possible. What about friends of the library? So I know we might have some friends of the library people here. Who is going to look at books from friends of the library? Okay, that's an even smaller number. What if friends of the library was on the first floor? Getting more traffic, being there for the community. These all would be good things to have and provide that access for the community. So when we say access, we mean on all levels. Children's literacy and learning. This is the second goal listed in the strategic plan. Now, we know that children are the future, right? What's really important is education for children and for them to grow up in an environment that they feel that they can do anything. And they want it to be a playful space. I know my own daughter, who is 6, she loves to go to the library, but she doesn't love to go to the library to read books. She does read books. I read books to her every night. However, she just loves to be in the environment. She likes to play with things. She likes to look at things. She likes to meet other children there. So this is also a very community-based topic. And, right now, the children's space is lacking a little bit. And so one of the things that we want to do is promote children's literacy and have a wonderful space that all the children of Richmond can come to. Lifelong learning. So we talk about children, but not only children want to learn, right? I think we all at some point want to learn things. And there are a lot of folks in the community that are really trying to learn more for themselves, bring themselves to a point where they feel like they can do what they want to do. They can follow their dreams and their path. So one of the things that we want to do in the library is provide those resources for people to feel as though they can be entrepreneurs, start their own business, or even just learn about something new and talk to their friend about it, go to a cooking class, all of these types of things that continue the learning and also bring the community together. So these are just some examples of spaces. The space up there on the top right is it's a maker space. So I don't know how many people know what a maker space is? Okay, good. It's a lot of people. So, basically, if you could go to a makerspace, actually there is a small makerspace in the library currently, but we want to make it even bigger and more apparent and be able to do tons of different types of programs and also have the infrastructure to allow for that to happen. Because what you can see is there's all kinds of electrical and infrastructure that's built in that image. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot going on there, but there really is because of everything that space enables you to do, because of the fact that it has connections to things you can use. Excuse me, sorry. You can use 3D printers. You can do CNC machines. You have all these resources, and that can evolve over time because you have the infrastructure. Streamlined library operations. What does this mean? Well, right now, when you walk into the building, now I know all of you probably know the building very well, but imagine for a minute that you are a new person who has never stepped foot into the library before. And you walk in, and what do you see? Security. What else do you see? A crazy mural. What else do you see? You see a stair. Now that stair, the doors are always open. It's a fire stair, but it's open so that people can visually see that they go up and down. And there's an elevator next to it. But why do you get in the stairwell to come here? But you would have no idea as a new person what exactly is up there. There's signs, but it's not that transparent. And the other thing is, if you walk into the building that Scott was referring to, which is that 20s building, it's sort of a warren of spaces. So in other words, you walk in and there's, other than the large atrium space with the marble that you all probably know about, it's corridors and small rooms. Because in the 20s, that's how they designed things. And in the center of all of that is this tall set of stacks that are not to code by any means, and they're not accessible by any means. And having them is just taking up space because it could be done a lot better. It was a holdover from back in the 20s. So streamlined library operations is all about when you walk in, where do you go? Who do you see? Do you know who you can go to for questions? So it's about trying to bring the library staff out to the community to allow them to interact. Now, some people might not want to interact with the library staff. If that is the case, then there's all kinds of things we can do digitally to make people feel comfortable. So, we can have interactive digital displays that people can click on and understand what's going on. What's going on in the library today? You could just walk in and find that out. So that's what we need. And uniquely Richmond, so this is what Scott was talking about. So, there is a lot going on in this community. And what we want to do is bring that out in this library. We want the library to be a place that everyone feels comfortable going to and that can reflect the community in the right way. So, you know, we know you have these wonderful tours of murals. So some of the things we've talked about is putting a mural into the building and engaging some of the artists in the community as well to bring that into this building.
Can everyone hear me okay? So what we wanted to talk about now is how does this vision get transformed? So Gil talked about the guiding principles, and the guiding principles are really important to make sure that everyone in the community supports what is that vision that we're trying to accomplish with a transformed library. Delia talked about the strategic plan. A lot of work has gone into the strategic plan to develop an approach and an idea surrounding how do we make the library more accessible, not just this building, but the entire system, more accessible to the community and providing the right kind of programs and the right kind of services that the community is interested in. But what we've now done, and what we want to take you through just a few slides to illustrate, is what is the vision, what is the concept that we could have for this building that would help us try to implement all those things that Scott and Gil and Delia just talked about. So the image on the screen is from Franklin Street, looking at the front of the building. And a part of our study was not only to develop the guiding principles and to assist with the strategic plan, we also looked at all of the infrastructure for the building. How does the structure work? Is the structure adequate? How does the mechanical system work, or does it? Is there enough power? Do we have the right type of fire protection system? So lots of analysis about the existing building. And one of the things that we evaluated as we went through the building is to look at the two buildings that Scott talked about at the beginning, the one that was built in the 20s, the one that was built in the 70s. What are the advantages of each of those buildings? What are the disadvantages of each of those buildings? And through this process, some of those things that Gil talked about, through this process, we learned that there are some things that are really challenging to alter with the building that was built in the 20s. And so this diagram says that everything to the dashed line, which was that building that was originally built in the 20s, is a building that really has a lot of challenges with it. And so in this concept, and again, I want to stress this is a concept, so we're not about to build this. We're not about to do detailed drawings. This is a concept to help everyone understand what's the opportunity of how to solve those strategic plan issues and how to implement the guiding principles. And this is one approach. There are multiple approaches, but today we're illustrating one approach to you all so that everyone is clear on how we can accomplish all of those things that we've outlined. One of the very important reasons to remove the building on the right is because it is very hard to access this building. It is a very unfriendly building to enter, whether you are able-bodied or whether you have challenges getting around. And by having a way to get into the new building at grade level and then moving through the building once you get in the building is one of the many very exciting changes and transformations that we can have as a part of this building. This next diagram, and you've seen this diagram on some of the advertisement for this meeting, is really just a conceptual depiction of what could this building be like as a transformed library. So about 85% of the building structure that you are sitting in today is maintained as a part of this plan. But about 15% of it has been removed or has been dramatically transformed so that, one, you get a much more accessible entrance. You get what we call this glass window on the right. It's really an enormous bay window, probably the largest bay window in all of the community of Richmond. And the reason it's a bay window is because we want people to see what's happening on the inside. We want the people on the inside to be able to see what's happening on the outside. And we want this glass wall to be a way for the public to feel integrated in what the programs are that are being offered, whether it be those children's programs or teens programs or maker spaces, all those things that Delia just talked about. We want people to feel welcome. And as Delia said, if you are coming to this building for the very first time, or even if you've been here a dozen times, we need to make sure that this transformed building is one that is friendly, that is welcoming, that people understand all of the range of programs that are being offered. Even today, there are so many programs that are being offered, but sometimes the community is not aware of all the things that are being offered. And this new transformed building allows people to see the breadth of program spaces that are being offered. If you'll go to the next image, Gil, are we doing okay AV wise? Everything good? Okay. So this is what architects call a site plan. So this is an image from the roof of the building. You'll see Franklin Street down at the bottom, and you'll see a yellow entrance, which is where the current entrance is to the building. First Street is over on the right, Second Street on the left, and the blue is the existing building, and the green on the upper left-hand corner is the library park at the back. So I'm about to take you through a couple of different plans of the building to illustrate to you how this building would be transformed. And though, as Scott said, this building currently has all kinds of levels. It has half levels and levels with ramps and all kinds of things. We are simplifying the building so that there will only be 3 levels to this building. There'll be the main entrance level, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. There'll be a second level, which will, both of the first and the second level will be very accessible to the community, very easy to find every single program that's offered in the building. And the third level is a new approach. It actually exists today, but it's going to be used in a very different way. The third level is the basement. And we're going to transform the basement into an enclosed parking garage. And we'll show you how we've done that within the existing building. So let's go to the first floor level. This is a depiction as strictly as a diagram of this transformed library that I'm talking about. And we're not going to go through all the details, but you'll see in the lower right a yellow or a gold color that's labeled the living room. And this living room is the room that I said earlier had Richmond's largest bay window. This is a room that is open and accessible to everyone. This is a room that would be accessible even after the library closes, because it would be accessible for meeting rooms of various sizes to allow people to have access to these community meeting rooms. There would be a small cafe or a coffee shop in this lobby space. There would be information about the entire downtown and Richmond community for you to learn. And also lots of seating, lots of gathering spaces for people to use this. So it's a room that's very flexible, a room that can be used in different ways depending on the day of the week. To the left of that dashed line are a whole series of different program spaces, whether they be the children's collection, the adult collections, lots of technology spaces. Many of the stacks would be on wheels that you could move around and have different activities and events throughout the week and throughout the month. The stacks will be much lower because though there is still a very important reason to have a paper collection, there's also lots of other services. And we're trying to make sure in this library, as Gil said, this is intended to be a nationwide example of what is an extraordinary library. And so flexibility is really key. Multiple uses of the same spaces are very key so that we can find the square footage and use it in the best way possible. And you'll also see in the upper right a purple area called the Auditorium. It's a space not unlike this one. It would be much more acoustically advanced. It would be much more flexible in terms of the types of seating and the range of seating. It would be accessible from that living room that we just talked about. And very importantly about all of this, that living room you're able to enter directly from sidewalk level. No stairs, no means to get up and down. And in the big circle that you see in the middle, that's also in yellow, that is really the nexus for this entire building. That nexus allows you to take stairs and elevators to different floors. It allows you to see the floors even before you get there so you can understand what programs and activities take place on that floor. It allows you to access the parking garage in the lower level. So that nexus allows you to very clearly have an understanding of what's in the building how to find it, and what programs are there. This next image is taken from the living room, and it is taken from the living room looking at that nexus. And this is a depiction, again, just an artist's depiction. It hasn't been designed yet. It looks like it's all finished. It's not. But it's a way to see the front door on the far left of this image. You can see a little coffee shop in the mid background, lots of flexible seating that you see in the foreground. In the middle of the image, you'll see a staircase, and adjacent to that staircase is also elevator access. And so from that stair and that elevator access, you're able to get through the entire building. You can see from this image, you can already see what's happening on the upper levels, and you can see the programs and activities that are on those levels. It's a very open building, one that's very accessible. The next level up is the second floor. And again, starting at that nexus, that circular space that we just talked about, there'd be a whole series of meeting rooms of various sizes, study rooms, community spaces like small business incubators and community assistants. There might be a teaching kitchen that allows people to learn kitchen skills or learn how to cook and prepare foods. There's a whole series of spaces for teens. Teens often like to be off on their own, so they're not in the central pathway or everything. They're off in one corner, which is usually where they like to be. And we've interviewed many of them to understand this is what their desires are. There's also a Richmond Room, which you see in a large circle in the upper left. And this Richmond Room is intended to be an exhibition space, a gallery space, a space that's changing, a space that can talk about the history, a space that can talk about the future of Richmond, and a place that people can use as a place, as a resource for the history and the future of Richmond. And this is an image, it's what architects call a building section. So if you can imagine taking a 3-layer cake and just cutting the cake into, this is like looking into one side of that 3-layer cake. And on this image, Franklin Street is on the left of this image, and the library park is on the right of this image. Everything that you see here is built today. We have not added anything to this building. This is just reusing the existing 1970s building, but transforming it from what it is today into something totally different. So let me explain how we're transforming it. On the lower level is where we currently think of as the basement. It's actually the level that we're sitting in right now. But behind that wall, there are 2 levels of stacks. Stacks that, from a practical point of view and from a programmatic point of view, we really don't need those stacks. And so this plan as a concept says, let's remove those stacks and let's use that as a way to locate about 60 to 70 cars on that lower level so that people can have very easy access to the library, that they can come up inside the building to whatever floor they need to, and also have all the security requirements that we need in the library. The next level up is what we currently think of as the first floor and the entry floor. It would be that floor that I was talking about that would have the children's library, the adult collection, a lot of technology spaces, and the main entrance to the building. And then on the upper level, it's kind of a mezzanine space. Again, it's the same square footage that you all have today, no changes at all. But yet we've transformed the spaces that are on that second level. And that's where the teen center is. And that's where those meeting rooms are and the small incubator spaces. So, and also the Richmond Room, which you see kind of in the middle of the large chandelier, and you can see the variety of exhibits that could be in that level. So this is really trying to give you an understanding of all of the things that have changed and transformed the building. But at the same time, we're maintaining about 85% of the building. And we're doing that for sustainability reasons. We're doing that to help reduce the cost of the construction of the building. And at the same time, we're doing a lot of work to the building to resolve those mechanical issues that we talked about, or those environmental issues, or the electrical issues, and to really truly transform this library to be a library of the 21st century that is flexible, that can change as libraries change, because they are continuing to change every single year in a very dramatic way. And this plan, this concept, is really intended to help address all of those things. So I think I'm going to stop there. Is that correct, Julia? Are we going to open this up to questions now? And I think the way we're going to do the questions, there'll be some questions that are coming through online. Some of you have maybe written down questions. If you need more sheets of paper, let us know if you have multiple questions. And we have a team that's we're gonna collect all of your questions right now. And there's a team that's gonna kind of sort through those so that we're not answering the very same question. They're gonna kind of figure out which questions. So if you want to raise your hand, if you've got, and someone will come through and pick all of those up. Scott, do you want to give any kind of overview of what we've said, or should we go right into questions?
I think if we go right into questions.
Okay, let me do that.
I'd like to just go right into questions. I think you've done a wonderful job of presenting how the building addresses the 5 major issues we hit on. One of the questions that we have is accessible libraries. How do we increase access to all of our library locations? So as you can see from the presentation, the ADA issues were addressed, the levels were addressed, and the navigation inside the building was addressed. One of the questions that we had was, how will technology support Richmond Library in the future? So one of those things that I don't know that we hit on in this presentation, but it will be, we will have cutting edge technology in the space. We've implemented a maker space, so we have 3D printers already. We'll expand all of those computer workstations that patrons use, and offer more mobile devices in the space, as well as all of those maker pieces. Children's literacy, what improvements will be made for the young readers? I think you recall that currently our children's space is pretty bare. We have relocated in recent years from the Dooley side of the building into the 72 side of the building and tripled the space. We've done some amazing work to make it more welcoming, but as you can see from the drawings, the concept of the future would be even more vibrant and inviting. Having flexible space that can be changed over time instead of it being static would allow us to bring in things that children could interact with and have learning that takes place on all the different levels that we all learn. So like we learn through reading, listening, we learn with our hands, and we learn by teaching. So the children's space would become a space that would engage our youth in all those different ways. I don't know if we had any other questions come in.
Scott, can you talk about where the law library will be located?
So the law library, one of the goals in our strategic plan was to really amplify the special collections that we have, and the law library is one of those special collections. We also have something called a foundation collection, and we would also add a business incubator program. So in this space on that first floor would be a space dedicated for entrepreneurs and business innovators and those seeking that kind of help in starting a business, or if they had a legal problem. We have a lot of what's called pro se lawyers. Richmond Public Library is the place in the city of Richmond where someone can get legal research to represent themselves or file papers. So the law library would continue in the space and have its own dedicated area.
How would the plan affect the current library park?
So in this plan, I don't know, do you want to answer that?
Sure. And Bill, can I get you to go back to the rendering for a second? Or is that easy to do?
Yes.
So the answer to the question is that it would not impact Library Park. We have actually worked very hard to make sure that we can actually expand the square footage of parks that are around the library. So you saw in the rendering a much greater park at landscape and softscape area at the entrance to the new building. We have also, which is a little hard to see in this drawing, but we also have removed some of the raised areas along First Street and Second Street, so those become landscape spaces. And the intent is all of that landscape space, including Library Park, would now be one comprehensive seamless landscape around the entire building. So instead of the entire building sitting directly on the sidewalk, you actually have landscape and softscape around all four sides of the building. So you're really enhancing the character of Library Park. But all the trees, all the landscaping that's in Library Park, there'll be improvements to that, but there'll also be improvements around the perimeter of the building.
Doug didn't mention the roof. I don't know if you noticed the roof. That would be another really amazing feature. That would, in Richmond, you know, we love our rooftop access points. We have them all over town. So the library would add a space that would be part of a green roof that would be accessible from inside the library. And then if you'll notice to the left on the 72 building, those are solar panels. One of our big goals in this project is to be the first net zero public library in the state of Virginia. I would love to see us be a net positive and be completely sustainable and cover all of our, reduce our carbon footprint and be just a a really great example of how we're being good stewards of our environment.
Can you talk a little bit about the impact on the old James Dooley building? Are there any plans to incorporate it into the new structure, or are there any plans to commemorate any of the space or portions of the building?
You want to talk about that?
So we talked about the fact that the Dooley building is obviously difficult. It's not accessible. And, you know, when it was built for a certain reason that we no longer need. That said, we know that it has historic value, and we know there are some spaces that are really wonderful in the Dooley building. And so one of the things that we are going to look at is what parts of the building can we repurpose. So we do this on a lot of our projects in our firm. When we see something that is worth something, either just emotionally, monetarily, historically, we will find a way to incorporate that into the building. And so I can imagine some of the marble panels that are in that great atrium, that they would be repurposed. We would use them somewhere else in this building. You know, the special collections area, I know there's, you know, a lot of sort of historic pieces and cases that are in there, and we're going to reuse those as well. One of the things that we didn't really talk too much about with regards to special collections is that Richmond Room that you all saw, which is in the 70s, going to be put in the 70s building, if that's where it winds up being. That is sort of a center point. So you have this entry, and then you have this center node where all the stair and everything is, and then you have another one, which is the Richmond Room. That is really your entry into the history of Richmond. And so from there, you can access the law library collection, the special collections, and this might be a space that we would put some of those repurposed materials.
And one more follow-up on that. In 1972, when they wrapped that building around the 28 building, many of the historically significant details were kind of run over in that building. It's unfortunate, but they preserved some of the key pieces, but there were elements of that building that were just really kind of wrecked and lost at that time. So in many ways, we can preserve the Dooley foyer, pieces of the Gelman room, but other parts of that building just aren't serving us well at this time. And so those parts will be discarded, and we'll preserve the best parts for this future building.
Well, can you talk about the dimensions of gallery space in the concept?
So that's going to be more difficult because really this is just a concept at this point. We would, in our one of the goals that we strive for in this whole plan is that we would have spaces that are flexible. So what could be a gallery at one time could also be a makerspace at another time. So having use that's flexible and adaptable over time is really one of the things that this plan will correct. So I can't give you a specific number on square foot or linear walls of gallery space, but we will have an improvement on the gallery space that we have right now. That would be a goal. I can't tell you exactly how much, but that is something that we will do.
Someone has a concern about the children's department in the back corner of the first floor. Can you talk a little bit about why it's positioned in that location?
That on the current, so I'm assuming that that's a question about the future space. Okay, so the future space. Can you all talk about how you place that?
So one of the things that we've talked about is the fact that we have this central node. So what we are trying to do is create a new path. So we've talked a little bit today about wayfinding and how the library currently is very difficult. So what we are going to do is make it so that, as you saw from the image, the interior image previously that Doug had commented on, that's very open. So you can see everything, you can see what's going on. And there is, in fact, sort of a direct line to the children's area. It is not in the front, that's correct, right now. Again, this is a concept. So right now it's sitting sort of, as you noted, in the back, but it's easily accessible and it's visible. And the other thing is that that library park that's going to be improved, there may be a way to incorporate some of that exterior space for the children's area. So again, these things are not set in stone, but it's a concept, and we know we're going to have a beautiful and lively children's space.
And let me just add one additional thing about the children's library location. We oftentimes find that parents have a real concern about security. And so, as Delia said, it's a very easily accessible location, but it's at one end of the building in order to be more secure, so that kids can't kind of find their way out and then get out of the building. So we are oftentimes thinking about the security of children, the security of teens, the security of everything in the library. And so that's one of the many reasons that we've located the children's library where it is.
And that's a point that we currently have a challenge with in this building because it's so wide open. Sometimes it's difficult to, sight lines are difficult in our space. We have some very tall shelving on the first floor, and it's very difficult to see into those areas. So we're constantly kind of patrolling that space. So that was one of the things that Delia and Doug mentioned earlier, is that our shelving would come down. So it moved from, right now it's at 90 inches, it would move down to about 6 feet. And so you'd be able to have better sight lines. It would also let more light in the building. It's one thing that we don't get in this space. We have these amazing cathedral windows, but because the shelves are so tall, you can't see out of the building and people can't see really into the space. And that's something that's really important in this process of having a welcoming space, but also having a space that feels good to be in. So we'll be able to achieve that with these changes.
The Richmond 300 plan calls for reduced parking. Can you talk about why you decided to add parking?
So one of the things that became very apparent in one of our community meetings, and it's been raised at almost every point, is parking. And access to this building is really hinged on that. I mean, I think all of you faced that when you came down here tonight. Let's eliminate that as an issue. And so I understand the point of the Richmond 300 approaching wanting to reduce parking, but in our case, that has been a major concern for us. And over time, we can probably reduce parking, but for now, the critical need is to expand parking. So that's how we've approached it. And what we're doing is repurposing space that is no longer really needed for books, that we can use to address this greater need that our users, our library community is telling us that they need. I don't know if any of you all want to follow up on that discussion. It was something we really talked a lot about, and it's been a very first and last sort of issue in this whole process.
People like convenience. And parking is a very big component of convenience, particularly for a library that's in a downtown location. So we need to make sure that we are addressing those needs that the users are requesting. And as Scott said, parking was the #1 topic at our last public meeting. Parking was the #1 topic at our online discussions that we've had. So we are trying to address that because there are so many programs that are happening inside. There are so many services that are happening inside. We want to make sure that people have more access to that. We also didn't discuss this, but it's vehicular related. There was a great interest in having a place that you can drive and drop off your books. Also a great place that you can drive and pick up books that you have on hold. So that is another part of the new portion of the building. It is allowing us to provide those services, and particularly in a downtown location, providing those services so people don't have to get out of their car with their kids in order to pick up books that they put on hold. It's really an amazing service. And so those are examples of the services that we're trying to provide in this plan. But as Scott said, the Richmond 300 plan is a far-reaching plan. And there's not anything we're doing to this lower level in transforming it into a parking space, parking area that we can't in 20, 30, 40, 50 years turn it back into some other useful space. So all the parking spaces that we are now designing as a firm, we are thinking about how are we making sure we are developing those parking areas so they can be used as something else in the future. And we have done that on this.
Is access in languages other than English a consideration when improving signage and wayfinding within the building?
Yeah, that would be definitely a concern that we would address.
Thank you. There are currently wireless equipment on top of the current library. How does that fit into the open rooftop space design envisioned?
Those would somehow have to be maybe replaced or removed from the building to accommodate what we want to do with that solar panels and open rooftop. So those would have to be removed.
Are you at a point where you can determine how much energy would be generated by the solar panels, or are we early for that?
We're pretty early in this phase. This is a concept, but I would hope we would have, I was joking with these guys today. I said, I would hope we have a solar array that we could power the block. You know, we'd be pushing energy out onto the grid. So that would be my dream.
The concept is beautiful. How will we pay for it?
Yeah, that was something we talked about. I think all of you are thinking, well, golly, what's the price tag on this? And maybe I'll let Doug or Didier talk about their preliminary estimates, because that was part of the project. And let me introduce Dexter Good. He is our capital projects person for the city of Richmond, and he has been our clerk of the works and kept us engaged with on track with what the city's needs are and the directives are and those sorts of things. But price has always been at the top of Dexter's list, and he and Gail, our goal would be is if we could fund this, we would do it in one big project instead of phased over time. But I'm going to let these guys talk about what our cost would be at this time.
The cost is not as important as the strategy of how to get the project to be built. So the cost on this project is probably in the range of $70 million. And when I say that, it's not construction. That's what I call total project cost. So that includes new furniture, new technology, testing, everything you could possibly need to move in and to cut the ribbon. That seems like an enormous amount of money. But I've been developing and building and designing public buildings for the last 32 years. And when I go back and look at my buildings that were built 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, every one of them is a total bargain. So we recently did a public library in a community in Kansas. We completed it 6 years ago. It seemed like an enormous amount of money at the time. I go back and talk to the director of the library system there. He goes, oh my gosh, buildings that are half this size are costing twice this amount of money. So to me, the issue that you all should be thinking about is not how much is it today, because that's going to seem like a very small amount of money in 5 years, in 10 years. This building was built in the 70s, so if you can look back 50 years from now, any idea how much this 74 edition costs?
I want to say it was $8 million. I think that's right.
So if you could build 100,000 square feet for $8 million, anyone here would do it. Dexter would do this all day long if he could build 100,000 square feet for $8 million. That's my point. So the thing that's important for you all and for the folks that are online is to help the foundation and the friends and the library board and the leadership to develop a plan of how can the community support this transformation. It is literally pennies a day. If we all stopped drinking coffee from Starbucks and we started putting that into the, you'd actually have more than you need, literally, in just a couple of years' time. So the question is, are those programs and are those services that are in the guiding principles, that are in the strategic plan, if those really mean something, if those really are going to have an impact on the community, well, then you need to figure out a plan to do this. And it's not a single source. It will be a fundraising from the city council. It will be private philanthropy. It will be foundations. To make projects happen like this, it is a whole bunch of different financial resources coming together. It's not just a single place. But that is even more important to get all of you engaged in the process, because it takes strategically thinking about how are we going to achieve what is really an enormous amount of money. And on the other hand, in a few short years, it won't be.
What is the combined impact of the shorter shelves and the loss of the basement stacks going to be on the number of books and other circulating materials available at the library?
So I think that's a question that refers to program, and that's something that we worked through in this process. And what we determined was, based on libraries our size nationally, what our current usage is, that a collection that is right size for our community would be 450,000 volumes in this space. The report will detail it more, but think of 450 volumes that are curated, current, and meet the popular demands of the majority of our users. So that will answer that need, and also provide us a really great library for the community of Richmond. I don't know if Delia has anything to add.
Yeah, just a quick thing. So one of the other, everything that Scott just said is absolutely true, but one of the other things is that, now there's compact shelving, and compact shelving is a way to get more books onto shelves in a smaller footprint. And so what this would mean is that more books would fit into a smaller space. So one of the plans is to allocate a space for compact shelving specifically in order to fit some of those volumes that we want to maintain, but that are currently taking up a lot of space.
And the compact shelving would house books that are moving less, because the books that we have on the first floor are going to be ones that are in constant motion, and they're the ones that people are going to want to grab and go. So the books that we still want to maintain, they'll go into that special compact storage space, and we can double the amount of that storage space. So that's how we would handle that going forward in this concept.
Is bike storage and parking being incorporated into the design?
Yeah, I believe it would definitely, that's part of the net zero and green package that we would have for all bike parking as well as storage.
How long would the building have to be closed while the demolition and construction is taking place?
That's a better question for our architects. I guess I'm gonna take a stab at it, but I'm gonna guess it depends. I guess it depends on how we would do that. So
we haven't gotten to that level of discussion. Some of our library clients, when they're going through such a transformation, decide to move out for a period of time. Oftentimes they'll go to a big box retail space like a grocery store or a retail space and just very economically use that space for a short period of time. The advantage to that is the amount of construction time can be reduced and the amount of construction costs can be reduced. Other clients say, I cannot possibly leave my location. I need to make sure I'm servicing our users and customers in that area. And we do it in a phased approach. So it takes longer and it takes more money, but that's an option. So we have not gotten to that level of discussion. We certainly are open and want the community's feedback on their thoughts on that. And as we get further down the road, we'll be able to look at what the cost of doing both of those are. And sometimes that helps people make a decision.
So I'm in favor of about 2 more questions. We've had you here for almost 75 minutes, so 2 more questions. And if you have other burning questions, we'll be here afterwards, but let's go ahead.
Your timing is good. I have one more. And it's less a question and more a wish for the renovation of the main Richmond Public Library. And that is that the main library be a symbolic and functioning bridge between City Hall, Richmond Public Schools, our branch libraries, a lifelong learning, information, and resource center.
I think that's a great place to stop. I agree. Yeah, hopefully, I believe this plan can do that. I think it's a concept that we've worked with the library for, the library facilities, the friends, the foundation, to really come up with a concept that I think we can grow upon. And your feedback tonight is going to help us make this even better. I can't thank you enough for your time. I appreciate your patience as we work through the challenges in the beginning of this meeting with our technologies. These hybrid meetings, Doug and I were talking about this in the beginning, they're difficult to pull off. But thank you for your presence and thank you very much. If you have additional questions, you can place them on our website. So that link that you use, you can go and we'll definitely follow up and answer any questions after the fact, or just let us know. Thank you so much.